The Sarasota County Bar Association is a proud partner in bringing you Law and Sarasota. With voluntary membership of over 1,000 lawyers and judges, the Sarasota County Bar Association serves its members and your community by advancing legal professionalism, promoting practice development, and fostering fellowship. Visit www.sarasotabar.com for more information and to use the online directory to find an attorney.
This program is brought to you by a grant from the Community Foundation of Sarasota County and the Sarasota County Bar Association. The Education Channel produces the program and broadcasts from its state-of-the-art campus on Beneva Road. They make this program possible. Hello, and welcome to Law and Sarasota. This is the program sponsored by the Sarasota Bar Association with funding provided by the Community Foundation of Sarasota. I'm Lee Haworth, a senior judge, and I have been serving as a moderator of this program for about 10 years. I have decided to step down and pass the baton to two very talented and respected judges. So this will be my last presentation, but I want to remind the audience that the purpose of Law in Sarasota is to inform the public about legal issues that can affect their daily life, and also to showcase our cluster of very innovative problem-solving courts, and then also to highlight the good work that lawyers do every day in this community, not just referring to their pro bono service where they give hundreds of hours to people that cannot afford an attorney, but also provide assistance during tragedies such as the Haiti earthquake, providing supplies, flying planes down. Also Hurricane Ian, helping the victims of that with all sorts of resources. So that's kind of the mission of it. I've always described myself as a child of the 20th century. I think you're deserving of folks that are a little bit more in tune with the technologies and judges who on a daily basis face the challenges of being a judge in this environment. So let me introduce the folks here that are going to be succeeding me. I'm going to introduce first Andrea McHugh. Judge McHugh was appointed to the bench in March of 2017. Her first 5 years were as a civil judge doing complex litigation in our civil division. She has since rotated into the juvenile division, which handles delinquency and dependencies. So she'll be seeing every person who's charged as a delinquent in Sarasota County and will be supervising, overseeing the progress of dependent children that are placed into foster care or other statuses. So she's also a board certified criminal attorney. And Andrea, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
We're also here with Erika Quartermaine. Judge Quartermaine was appointed to the county court about 10 years ago. She presides over county civil and criminal cases. She has a huge docket. One of the big challenges of judges everywhere is case management. She's become an expert in that. Both Judge McHugh and Judge Quartermaine have been active in something called TYLA, T-Y-L-A, which is a program called, acronym for Turn Your Life Around. And its focus is on children women mostly, who have been subject to sexual exploitation. And that's been one of their commitments that they've done for a couple of years. Also, there's a mental health court, and Erika was the instigator behind our community care court, which she may be able to tell you more about. So, passing the baton to you, Andrea.
All right. Thank you, Judge Haworth. It is our pleasure to be here hosting Law in Sarasota and to take this esteemed position over for you. We appreciate what you've done in educating the public through this program.
Well, appreciate that.
Yes, it is a privilege to be your successor, and we're very thankful for the opportunity. Since 2005, this program has provided that quality education to the community and encapsulated the legal history of Sarasota, and you've done a fine job. We hope to continue to do this, and we have big shoes to fill. And so now that we are officially the hosts, we are going to turn to the subject matter of our first show.
That's right. Today we will be talking about and talking to a Sarasota legend, a judge who has received numerous awards from the Florida Supreme Court and a plethora of community groups, a judge that has ranked first amongst circuit judges in the judicial polls put on by the Sarasota County Bar Association for a number of years, and a judge who has pretty much revamped every division he's ever touched, a judge that has served our community as the chief judge and really changed the judiciary and the service that the judiciary provides to our community for the better, and a judge that has a day named after him in both Sarasota and Manatee counties.
So that's right. We're talking about you, Judge Haworth.
Well, you're embarrassing me. My mother always told me, said, Lee, be humble because you got a lot to be humble about.
Well, today we're going to spend some time discussing the contributions that you've made to the community and hearing about your insights about our community, our legal community, the community at large, and your hopes for the future. So let's get going. Welcome.
Thank you.
Let's dive in.
All right.
All right, so being a native, you have a strong connection to Sarasota. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up and where you went to school.
Well, I grew up on a street called Bayview Drive, which is between Cherokee Park and Harbor Acres. So that meant I attended elementary school at Southside, went on to Brookside, and graduated from Sarasota High School, class of '63. It was a different city then, and I have to calibrate my attitude about Sarasota based on what's happening now, because, you know, we grew up in a village. It was really a golden age for at least people in my social class, and we had a good time. We would ride bikes to the beach, ride bikes to the Florida Theater, which is now the Opera House. We went hunting, fishing on a regular basis without our parents. There were no helicopter parents, and so we were left on our own and basically stayed out of trouble. Now, there were some exceptions, but most of the time it was a safe community, didn't lock our doors, and of course things have changed a lot. But it was a great time, and we always say that it was a golden age for the people of my generation to grow up in Sarasota. We had art, we had music. As a matter of fact, at Southside, every year we took a trip to the Ringling Museum, go through all the Peter Paul Rubens, of course the David statue, not a problem. And we learned, actually, I went so many times, I could be a docent. I mean, I could tell you about all the history. And in our 6th grade, they finally announced, we're not gonna take you, we're gonna take a field trip. We said, oh no, are we going to the Ringling Museum again? Teacher says, no, we're going to a sewer plant. We said, that's really cool. We love that sewer plant. So, anyway, yeah, it was a great time to grow up here.
All right, I'm gonna ask you a quick follow-up question. Tell us about the type of fish you caught back when you were growing up.
Okay, this is kind of unusual. My dad was a hunter and a fisherman, but he did saltwater fish. So we went to Lake Okeechobee. We had a cabin there. So we would pass people headed to the Gulf to saltwater fish, where we were going to fly rod fish in Okeechobee. We fished the rim canals around Lakeport, and it was, you know, bass, brim, bluegill. My dad was a superb fly fisherman. I was not, so I often volunteered just to steer the boat. But yeah, it was, I didn't mind catching, but the cleaning was not a happy thing. We also hunted down there. We hunted ducks and turkeys and deer, although I never had to dress the deer, but we did have to, you know, clean up quail and ducks and that sort of thing, cook them. So it was kind of a rustic experience. But because I was with my father, I really enjoyed it.
All right. I know that you served our country in the Army Reserves and rose to the rank of Lieutenant Colonel. I think the audience would really enjoy hearing some of your unique experiences in that, especially when you served for General Schwarzkopf's lawyer.
Well, it's probably a longer story than we have here, but I'd been in the reserves for about 20 years. And my role in the reserves, I was a commander of a unit called the 199th Judge Advocate General Detachment International Law Team, which is a euphemism for the law of war. So my job was to appear before troops, teach them who not to shoot, what the proper targets were, how you treated surrendered prisoners, the whole thing. And I'd done that for quite a while. And I was actually out at the Judicial College in Reno for a 3-week course on general jurisdiction, which we did to new judges in those days. And August 2nd, 1990 hit. I'd only been a judge since 1989, January of 89. So I'd been a judge a year and several months. So Iraq is invaded, or invades Kuwait, and I get an alert in my unit saying, you may be called up. We thought we were going to backfill with active duty JAG officers that were going to go to the Kuwaiti theater of operations, but it turns out our unit was designated by the Department of Defense to be the primary unit at that point to prosecute war crimes being committed by the Republican Guard. And so we went overseas. We went to Fort Meade, Maryland, got organized and deployed to Saudi Arabia, Riyadh, set up 3 programs, one in Dhahran, one in Kuwait City, and one in Riyadh. Basically, in the middle of this, the mission changed from a prosecutorial team. We were set up kind of like a U.S. Attorney's strike force. We had civilian Kuwaitis who were part of our unit. We had a Navy officer, a Marine, and then I had my unit. It was small. We only had 8 people. So the mission changed from prosecution for political reasons to documentation. So we had to prove all the atrocities that the Republican Guard had committed against the Kuwaiti citizens, and that was a horrifying experience. And then at the end of the war, which was fairly brief, I came back to the Pentagon and wrote the report for the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Wow, what an experience. Well, again, thank you for that service. That's incredible.
Well, it's really quite minimal compared to what the Iraq War has brought to my fellow soldiers and Marines, and it doesn't compare. But, you know, it was something that needed to be done. I wouldn't volunteer to do it again necessarily, but it was an important service, so I was glad I had an opportunity to contribute. I was certainly well prepared for it, and we did the best we could there with really limited resources.
So yes, thank you for that service. That's pretty incredible. You were both a prosecutor and a civil litigator. So what made you decide to become a judge, and how did that process occur?
Okay, I'm a trial junkie. When I graduated law school in 1970 and passed the bar, I came to my hometown, could open a practice. I had no clients. So I would go to the courthouse and watch trials. And in those days, we didn't have an evidence code. And every judge had particular quirks about what they thought was admissible. So by going from courtroom to courtroom, I was educated as to the peculiarities of the judges when they would make an evidentiary ruling. Now, that's changed because we're all reading off the same piece of, same sheet of music now with the evidence code. But we didn't have it then. And so you couldn't cite the 90.163 or whatever because there was none. You just argued common law evidence. And that was that was a fun thing. And sometimes you were shocked by what was admitted and what was not admitted. So like I say, I was kind of a junkie, and I got an opportunity to, I got recruited into the state attorney's office, and I rose to the level of chief prosecutor. But, you know, they kept giving me administrative jobs and, you know, interviewing people. I know I helped prepare the first pre-sentence investigation interview sheet for the prosecutors to use when they talked to law enforcement to decide whether to file. We did the first rape kit. They weren't doing anything with sex assault. We did a search warrant kit, which again was unusual. But I gradually advanced to the point where I wasn't doing trial work. And so when the local law firms was dividing up, needed a litigator, I volunteered and participated in the first class for board certification in civil litigation. So that's what I did. why would you not want to be a judge? You're kind of on the ringside seat of these titans of the bar wrestling over important issues, and that's just exciting to me.
A trial junkie. I'm going to steal that. I feel like I'm a trial junkie too. I love that. And I have to tell you, just the imagining trials without the evidence code really makes my skin crawl as a judge now. We're so grateful to have guidelines to follow. So.
I remember one of the exceptions was a hearsay exception, that if the party, if there was a hearsay offered, if the person against whom it was offered was present, it was admissible.
They're here.
They heard it, so.
That explains some arguments that I get from attorneys in court sometimes.
The other thing we would hear in family court, lawyers would say, "There's no evidence code here. We don't do the evidence." So yeah, you got to do the evidence. It applies in family law too, but it was kind of an education for the lawyers.
Right. You've really just been a part of the evolution of law in Sarasota, which is really interesting to hear your perspective. What I think is one of your most distinctive characteristics as a judge is the way that you transform the divisions or areas that the judiciary serves the community when you get your hands on it. And I know you did that when you were assigned to the division as an assigned judge, but you also really did quite remarkable work when you were the chief. And so if you don't mind, would you just list some talk about some of the highlights? I have some prompts for you if you'd like, but some of the highlights of the things that you did to change the way we service the community.
Well, the ones that come to mind are the reform of the child welfare system. We had Governor Jeb Bush had privatized foster care, and it was out of balance. In other words, there was no check and balance. And so we found that there were children disappearing, not being accounted for, and that there was systemic problems with it. So working with Bob Butterworth, who was Secretary of the Department of Children and Families, and his successor, George Sheldon, we were able to change the system in a positive way. And one of the things that came out of that was an organization called the Family Safety Alliance. It's a group of citizens authorized by statute who meet to make sure that the foster care system in the courts is meeting the needs of these children. For example, we have children of a young age who are passed from foster parent to foster parent. They might be 6 years old and have 5 different changes in their lifestyle and homes. We have child protective investigators who leave the job after 3 months. These are the people that go into homes and have to make the decision whether to remove a child or not. It's a wonderful organization. It's in effect now. We have citizens from Manatee, Sarasota, and I think DeSoto meeting on a regular basis to find out what's the caseload of the case managers, what's the turnover rate, are the children's needs being fixed, and if not, they can step in and suggest corrective action because it's actions of the community. That is a way to make the foster care system run perfectly on all fours. Mm-hmm. It's not perfect, but for example, if there's a death, they're allowed to participate in the death review to see if there's any negligence. So it's really a great organization. I commend those members for their public service in that respect. The other thing that happened during my chief judge tenure, we got hit by 2 tsunamis. The first was the foreclosure mm-hmm. crisis. The second was the budget cuts. Mm-hmm. And one of the most difficult things I had to do, legislature told us, chief judges, you must reduce your budget. The only thing we have are people. So Walt Smith, the court administrator, and I had to sit around a table and say, who can we let go? And these were good people. They weren't incompetent mm-hmm. state employees. They were excellent employees. But if we didn't meet this goal line that they gave us, they couldn't get paid. None of us could. So we had to go through and unfortunately terminate some very good employees. But the second thing was the foreclosure mess. We got hit by hundreds of cases, and I think it went from like 400 in a year to 4,000. I mean, it was enormous.
And just to orient the audience, that would have been in the 2008 recession as a result of that, right?
It started about 2007 mm-hmm. when it started growing, and then it was overwhelming. what was happening is that when a person was getting ready to lose their homestead because they weren't paying their mortgage, they would try to contact their banker or their lender to try to work out a deal. They wouldn't pick up the phone. They would call numerous times or be put on hold for 2 hours. And when you're getting ready to lose your homestead, you need to have that communication. So we implemented a mandatory mediation program where we forced them to come into a mediation and talk about what the issues were, and that got adopted as a state model. But anyway, we were able to get the voices of these homeowners heard at their lenders and make the lenders do the things when they came to court. They were filing sloppy pleadings, so we started a program called Stop the Slop, which got their attention real quick. And we worked our way through that, and it was quite an experience. That was one of the projects.
That's great. And I will just mention before I turn it over to Judge Quartermaine, also that the self-help library at the Sarasota Courthouse is named after Judge Haworth because of your efforts in always promoting access to justice and assistance for pro se litigants or litigants that are not represented by attorneys. So tell me about that being named after you and the impact that library and that service has on our courthouse and our service now.
I got invited to the grand opening. They didn't tell me they were going to name it after me, and I had my grandkids there. They asked me to have my son and the grandkids, and they announced it. We walked into the library, and my granddaughter said, "It's not much of a library." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "There's no Harry Potter books." Aww. So in any event, it was a great honor, and I stop by every now and then to see how they're doing. But yeah, trying to help people access justice is one of the projects that we in judiciary, all of us, are engaged in.
Good.
So I'm a native too, and I know we're all in love with this community. What insight do you have, or what are your biggest hopes and fears about the future of our community?
I think my concern is loss of support by the community in the concept of an independent judiciary. We are just ordinary people called upon to do extraordinary things sometimes. And we have two constituencies. Of course, we have to run for office every 6 years, and people have to vote. But our priority for that is the Constitution. When we take our oath, we agree to follow the laws and to obey the Constitution. And that's our priority constituency. And I just think of a couple of cases where, I just give you some examples. In 2005, a 9-year-old girl, Jessica Marie Lunsford, was kidnapped out of her house in the middle of the night by John Cooey and murdered. She was found in a garbage bag. Apparently it had been buried 4 feet down. Her fingers were coming out of the garbage bag, and it was a horrible murder. So he gets charged, and he goes in front of Judge Rick Howard. He's a Citrus County judge, and his job is to review the confession that John Cooey gave. In the middle of the confession, he asked for an attorney, not once, but multiple times. Now, most folks know about the Miranda decision, but when you ask for a lawyer, you stop. They did not, and they kept going, and they got some admissions. So Judge Howard was in the position of having to grant the defense motion. You can imagine the outrage that lay people had in the community. I think he got shunned at church. I think his barber wouldn't talk to him. Of course, his kids got ostracized at school, but he was following the law. Now, fortunately, in that case, there was enough evidence to convict him, but that wasn't a relevant consideration. The judge had to do that. And people need to understand, that's why we talk about having a jurisprudence based on the law and not people. He could have said, well, he's convicted. I mean, he's guilty of this. Why don't we just let the confession in? No, he was stopped by constitutional principles. Another example is Susan Schaefer. When I was learning to be educated in capital punishment, Susan Schaefer, her history was she was a public defender in Pinellas County, and she fought death penalty, and she hated it passionately. And I think she defended several of the really horrible cases there. But she gets appointed as circuit judge. Now she has to obey the law, which includes capital punishment. She became the teacher of judges to tell them how to do it the right way so you wouldn't get reversed. And she probably sent more people to death row than any single judge. And she still hated the capital punishment, but she took an oath and she had to do that. So that's two examples of why we have to respect the Constitution despite our personal beliefs.
All right. Well, let's just take a moment to see if there's any advice you'd give to a new judge.
I'm glad you asked that.
Always prepared.
Well, back when I was chief judge, I wanted to give advice to new judges. So I made 10 commandments of good judging. I'm not going to read all of them to you here. I'll give you a paper here you can take back. But okay. One of the things that judges have to do is case management. They don't teach that in law school. You learn that on the job or at a judicial college. Case management means we're under an obligation to move cases to make sure they don't get stuck in limbo, to move them to disposition as soon as we can in respect to due process. So learning just how to do what we call differentiated case management is a skill. But we have to keep remembering there's a human being behind each case. We can't be so focused on moving cases that we disregard the reality of what's happening to the person who's bringing these lawsuits, who are involved in the court. So keeping that perspective, you're running an assembly line, but you have to understand that there's human beings behind every file, and you have to be respectful of their rights and their understanding of the process. County judges do it all the time. You see a lot of pro se people, circuit judge less, but still, you have to be aware that your decisions are making profound impacts on these people, and you can't lose sight of that. Other things I've recommended that, we have developed a process where judges can reside in their home district or home county. But sometimes you got to go to South County, Venice, or you might have to go to DeSoto or Bradenton. Just be thankful. Don't, when I was a chief, I'd say to a judge, you're going to go to, he's a Sarasota judge. I say, you're going to Manatee. Oh, I can't go to Manatee. I'm a Sarasota. No, you're a circuit judge. Right. You go where you're needed. You're needed in Manatee. So that's just an example of it. The other thing is I always encourage them to do their own research. They can go to court counsel. We have help there. But I say, one of the joys of being a judge, doing your own research.
I do agree with that. Well, we are going to have to start concluding this episode, although I know we could go on for a long time with your wisdom. But I, again, want to thank you for the gift of hosting this show, and we will not let you down.
I'm sure of that.
Yes, Judge Haworth, I think on behalf of Judge Quartermaine and myself, thank you for your mentorship in our judicial careers, and also all of the judges of the 12th Circuit have really benefited from not just the changes you've made to our circuit, but also how you've treated us and always been a resource for all of us to give those very important pieces of advice. And we thank you for joining us today. And to the audience, we were not able to cover all of Judge Haworth's awards today, as they are so numerous, but we are going to list them on the screen at this time. And so I think it's a wonderful summary of the extraordinary career that he's had to see the list of awards that he's won. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Judge Haworth.
You're welcome. And I'd like to thank the college for their use of this beautiful studio and the work that they do.
For more than 40 years, the Community Foundation of Sarasota County has partnered with estate planning attorneys and their clients to unlock possibilities for everyone who calls our region home. Our motto, be the one, reflects our deeply held belief that anyone can be a philanthropist and give back to our community regardless of means. Visit www.cfsarasota.org or call 941-955-3000 for more information.